So I just started a new playthrough of Silksong, and I gotta say, coming from like directly from Hollow Knight, they're just so different, like game wise. Like obviously it's a sequel, and there's like a lot of similarities. There's the designs of the characters and the like idea of the gameplay and like all that. But I guess what I mean is just more the feel, like Silksong. I guess the first thing that I noticed is just that the movement speed is slower. So like when you're walking, like naturally without the dash and like the running or anything, like you're just naturally slower than you are in Hollow Knight. And I think that that really changes the feel of the game, especially in the early game. Once you do get the dash, it kind of goes the other way actually. Um, you kind of become faster in Hollow Knight. In Hollow Knight you had like just the regular dash, but in Silksong you have like the dash, but it's also the running ability. So you can just run the entire time, and it's a lot faster than just like the regular dash in Hollow Knight. And I think that that really makes it feel a lot faster. Like when you get to later sections in the game, like Mount Fae, and you're like running about through this like hard parkour. It feels a lot different than something like the Path of Pain, which was like the other hard section for parkour in like Hollow Knight, and it just feels a lot like slower. You know what I mean? Like in Mount Fae, it felt like I was playing closer to Celeste than Hollow Knight almost, and that's just because of like how fast you move. Another reason that I feel like the games sort of feel different is like how linear they are. Like in Hollow Knight, of course it's so old that there's a lot of different tricks that you can learn to like really change up the progression. You can learn like stall ball to get into what is it, fungal waste early, or you can use it to get wings early, or like there's just a lot of different things that you can do to kind of skip progression. However, in Silksong, at least especially in the early game, there's not as much of that. I think that it might be something to do with instead of going down in the game, you're going up, because the whole philosophy between or in Hollow Knight was that you are going down. Meanwhile, in Silksong, it's that you're like venturing upwards. And I think that it's just easier to go downwards than upwards, because downwards there's multiple paths you can take, whereas upwards it feels a little bit more limited, even though that doesn't make sense because they're kind of like exact opposites. But anyways, I think that the linearity of like the early game is it makes it feel a lot different. Not bad. I don't think the Silksong is bad for being more linear. I think the Silksong is like a very fun game. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've only beaten it once so far, so I don't have nearly as many hours in it as I do with Hollow Knight. But like from what I've played, it's really fun. Really polished. It's just a different feel. It's kind of like you could compare it Dark Souls 3 versus Dark Souls 1. Like in Dark Souls 3, the game is like super linear. There's not many paths you can really take, and that's kind of how it feels with Silksong. I think there are a little bit more paths in Silksong than Dark Souls 3, but just that idea. Whereas Dark Souls 1, it's like a really interconnected world, and you can really explore like a lot of the regions, and everything kind of like opens up. And that's kind of how Hollow Knight feels, like especially once you get Mantis Claw. Like the game just like opens up. You could go to City of Tears, you could go to Deep Nest, you can do like skips to get to like harder places, and or you can do the skip to get to Resting Grounds, which opens up Kingdom's Edge and the right side of City of Tears. Like there's a lot of different options that you can do, because of how interconnected the world is. Whereas Silksong, like there's kind of only a couple paths between areas. And like that's not a bad thing. Like I said, like I enjoy Silksong, and like the areas themselves are like beautiful. Like they're super fun to play in. I mean, some of the areas are kind of annoying, But like they were meant to be that way. They're not annoying in the sense of like I don't want to play. They're annoying in like I haven't had enough time in this game to like be good. So a lot of the areas like will like they'll do damage, like gray moor, especially that stupid bird section, or what's another area? Or Mount Fay, like I already said, even though that's less of an area and more of just a parkour challenge. Or I guess like that's the idea of the area. Instead of like the White Palace and its own separate thing, like in Hollow Knight, they just integrated it into the world, which is fine with me. It's a fun section. Another big difference between Hollow Knight and Silksong is the customization. So like in Hollow Knight, you had the charms, and that was really your biggest form of customization. There wasn't really that much besides that. And in Silksong, it's kind of just completely the opposite. So, like in Silksong, there's just so much more to customize. Obviously, you have the charm equivalent, which is the like tools and like the red, yellow, and blue one tools. But it's more than that. Not only are the tools customizable, well, I mean, first of all, they added categories with the colors, which is kind of like a different feel to it slightly. But also the bigger difference is the crests, like introducing different like basically like entire move sets is kind of crazy, and it really changes the game. Some of the crests weren't necessarily implemented the best. Some of them are really like you can only find late game. So like for instance, if your favorite crest is the Shaman crest, then you're not going to be playing that throughout most of the game. So it's kind of useless in that sense, unless you like mod it in. But I mean, at that point, it's kind of just breaking the whole point of it. But the thing is that there's just like a lot of customization with these crests, and it's not even just the crests; it's also the silk skills. That's another like layer of customizability, because like in Hollow Knight, you just got all your spells, and then you could just use any of them. Whereas in Silksong, you really only get to choose like one to a couple, depending on what crest you have, and that kind of really changes up the gameplay because. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not really much of a spell user. I didn't really use spells in Hollow Knight, even though they were really good. And I haven't really been using it a lot in Silksong. I mean, I've been trying a little bit more, but I really just don't use it that much. I usually just go for nail builds because they're so simple. But in Silksong, like you just have a lot more options. And it's kind of limiting in the sense that you can't use all of them, but I feel like that would definitely be OP, like just having access to all of them would kind of break the game. And so it's kind of nice to get that like next level of customization. And as to the like red tools and like the actual damage changing things, or like things that do damage, I think that it's a really nice concept. It's like very like it sounds good in theory. However, I think that in execution, there's just a little bit too little of a need to use them. I think that some of them are definitely like very good, but like to me, if I'm already not using silk skills, then I'm probably not going to be using the tools that much, unless it's like something basic like the range, like the 3 kunais. Like that's what I used most of my first playthrough, just because like it was simple, it was ranged, and like you have to use the what is it called, the other currency with the little white fragments. I'm not sure what they're called. But I mean, they're spread out everywhere, so the game is really telling you, hey, use tools. And I think that they are definitely like well implemented. Like they're good to use. I think it's really just the fragments that is kind of an issue, because there's just so many more fragments than rosaries. And that kind of pivots into the next topic, which is like the economy. The rosaries versus geo economy. I think that like a lot of people have said that like rosaries are just a lot more hard to come by, and I definitely agree with that. I think that they went for the shards, the little white things, instead of rosaries most of the time, which wasn't necessarily the best thing because like some things like cost a lot of rosaries, so you kind of just have to farm if you really want to buy a bunch of stuff. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I would appreciate like maybe like 1.5 to 1.25 like more rosaries. I think that like wouldn't hurt the game in any sense, but I mean I'm not like screaming into like my monitor with the way it is now. Like it's not horrible, as some people like to say. But like overall, I mean, there's definitely like a lot of differences between the games that make them feel really different. But like there's still sequels. Like there's still a lot of similarities. Obviously, the art style. I mean, Silksong is just more. I gotta give props to Silksong for this. Silksong is just prettier than Hollow Knight. Like Hollow Knight was already an extremely like visually pleasing game, so like we thought like, oh, it's just gonna be like similar quality, but no, they made it better. It looks smoother, like it's just a lot prettier. But in and then the same regards to the music. The music of Silk Song is just like amazing. Same quality as like Hollow Knight. I haven't gone through the entire soundtrack like a billion times like I have with Hollow Knight, so I can't tell you which one is better. But like I can say they're both like very similar quality. But there are just like a lot of similarities to the games that obviously are warranted because they're sequels. But there's also a lot of differences, like I mentioned, that like make them feel like their own distinct things. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that it's good that Silk Song is distinguishable from Hollow Knight. Because if it was just the same, then what's the point of playing Hollow Knight when we have like pretty much the same thing? Or what's the point of playing the, Silk Song when we already have Hollow Knight? So it's nice that they kind of change things up a bit. Overall, I don't really have a preference right now. I mean, they're both just like amazing games, 10 out of 10. So we'll have to see in the future how I feel about Silk Song. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. Thank you for watching.